Hello, everybody. Lovely to see so many of you here. We've got a fantastic 60 minutes ahead of us. We're going to be diving into public service media, what it is, some of the pressures that it's facing across Europe, and some of the ways that the people to my left are looking to work around those pressures and overcome the challenges. I'm not going to get into the introductions. We've done all that, so we're going to get right into the discussion. I think place to start, let's sort of try and set the landscape a little bit, if we may. Noel, let's start with yourself. We'll go down this way. President of the EBU, you've got quite a good take on the PSM landscape across the continent. How do you see the PSM ecosystem at the moment across Europe?
It's great to be here. I think the ecosystem there's a lot of pressure. A lot of political pressure, let's be upfront around it, particularly in some countries where some politicians and political parties want to get greater control on public service media and are being much more direct in how they exert that control. There are funding issues that go with that kind of pressure because that's the lever. Very often in terms of getting that pressure is you do this or you don't get your funding. So there's a lot more of that, and also in countries that we wouldn't have seen it in before. So I think that there's a lot of competition from particularly the big platforms who are absolutely dominating in terms of commercial income, in terms of reach, in terms of power. There's never been a time when so much power has been wielded by so few individual companies, and none of them are European. So there's all of that. So you stand back and you go, okay, I'm going to wake up in the morning and be totally depressed. But the other part of the landscape is public service media remains the most trusted media. In 90%, and I'll give some figures rather than just talk, in 90% of countries, public service media is rated number one. 90% of European countries. The average gap between number one and number two is 24%. We have shown the public service media where it is strong, democracy, all of the independent democratic indices are stronger in countries where you have a strong, and that makes sense because you have an independent broadcaster there. We are investing 21 billion in European content every year. We have 248 separate channels, 248 on TV, radio, and online for minorities. Nobody else does that. So I look at all this and I say, yes, there is pressure, unprecedented. Yes, I worry about that pressure. But for the theme of today, there is still so much being provided that is worth fighting for. And particularly now when we see how polarized the world is becoming.
I think, yeah, it's really important to sort of underline, I mean, the amount of money, apart from anything else, that PSM put into the production sector and they keep that sort of cultural vibrancy going across the continent. Robert, let's zoom in on Croatia. We're in Zagreb. Let's talk about just a sort of broad brushstrokes on how is PSM, public service media, how is it faring in Croatia?
Yeah, thanks. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. Yeah, zooming in from a broader European perspective, first of all, I would like to say that we as HRT are very proud that we are approaching 100 years anniversary soon and being part of the big PSM family with the EBU. So we share lots of the common challenges these days. So zooming to Croatia, HRT is still maintaining the very good connection with the audience. We still represent relatively high percentage of relevance and good reach, so we are doing quite well in that respect. Of course, challenges coming from the financial pressure, coming from different behavior of the audience, and technological development are something which we need to tackle, and we are tackling this in a way that we are trying to transform and to consolidate our operations in a way. So that's why we are now starting the process of hopefully designing the new legislative for HRT, to finding new financing models and the way to how to reorganize the operations and our public remit in a way that it's need to be slightly redefined in a way to move away from a linear thinking more to prepare for a digital-only world. And I'm positive that we can do it because there are good foundations at HRT, as although we are old radio diffusion organization still, but there are lots of potential to be moving and to be fit for future, which is, I mean, nobody knows exactly to define what the future of media is, but with all the technological development and, a wave of AI-generated content is coming fast in a way that it's going to be a totally different ball game. And as broadcasting towers will fade away eventually, all internet media landscape will appear, and then we will have to find for audience and find them on a very personal way.
Yeah, it's a rapidly evolving ecosystem, isn't it? An industry that we're trying to ride out here. Natalia, in Slovenia, tell us about Slovenia and PSM. Maybe some of the challenges that you guys are facing, but how's the landscape there?
We have survived the right-wing attack on public service media. Survived on a very low level, meaning completely exhausted financially and in a complete chaos. So after the change, we got the new law, and the new law is kind of the new law is giving us independence, but it doesn't giving us the financial stability, and it doesn't giving us the right legal framework for work, meaning that we are still in the public sector, where we need to obey rules which are constraining our operations and our development, our organizational chart. We have the law which is predicting which media we need to issue, which is not okay. I think you know that in the modern law needs to be very opened, so that you can define with the statute which media will develop, which content you will develop, and you just have the main, public service content which is defined. Recently, we have a raise in trust. We went up 8 points, which is quite a large trust. We went up in ratings. We somehow got some young generation watching our news with a very good work on the social media. And hopefully we will be able to finance next year new series, which my colleagues who are somewhere here are preparing right now, looking for co-production, and hopefully we will be able to find certain co-producers in the region. So we are trying to survive in a very difficult competition, because we know that small countries are under attack of the big streamers. Cable penetration is really high, and it's really difficult to fight. So we need to all, do all the innovative things, to find out our users, our viewers, our listeners.
Good stuff. Yeah, Nina, honoured to have you here, and thank you very much for coming. In terms of your point of view and the place that PSMs have in Croatia, how important are they to the broader cultural definition of the country?
Well, it's crucial, of course, first and foremost for our culture and creative industries, because when I see the challenges for the PSMs today, it's on several levels. The first is what Noel was also, and Robert, and what you were evoking, the issue of independence and our general understanding of the importance of the public service media, which is providing an independent, trustful, ethical journalism. Then there is this fundamentally important for culture and creative industries, especially in the countries which have a smaller number of inhabitants. And unless you have public service media as a vehicle for distributing public money and to invest public money in the local content, there is no one who is going to produce high quality relevant local content. It is also a challenge in larger countries, but I think for smaller countries it is particularly important. But then, of course, you have a broader context. You have this fast-changing media landscape where public service media, because it is so heavily regulated, and it has to be heavily regulated because it has public financing and it has public service, which it has to deliver to the public. So the public has to have all these checks and balances, how it is controlling. So this is positive because the system that we built around Europe is such that protects public service media more or less successfully from direct public influence, but it makes public service media operations so complex and unable to change fast enough to keep up with all the changes. So while commercial media can very easily adapt their operations based on interest, their data about audience and everything, the public service media usually has very strict legislation, channels. In Croatia, it's even worse with the minutes of the program that they have to deliver. So we have to find a way, and we are discussing it not only in Croatia, but also at the European level, how to keep and protect this framework that is going to guarantee a special importance and special position and special rules for the public service media, fully aware that it is one of the key elements of our democracies, and at the same time give a necessary flexibility in order for public service media to be able to transform and change very quickly. We have at the moment a huge issue with financing when it comes to the Croatian radio and television, and we are going to address this year with additional funding from the government, while the HRT will in the next year go through the process of transformation, and we are going to use this year to prepare the new legislation. But also there is issue of producing more content for younger audiences, trying to catch their attention there where they are, mostly on social media and other, in order to bring them also to the content that the public service broadcaster is producing. A very challenging task for the directors of good luck to the two of you and the other managers of public service broadcasters across Europe.
I think, certainly lots of challenges, lots to talk about as well. You touched on some of the issues there. I think it's worth probably celebrating PSMs and what you guys do, because sometimes the challenges, and the pressures that they get placed on local broadcasters or public broadcasters. You guys are still doing amazing shows. You're still cutting through with audience. Natalia, I wanted to talk to you about you recently, in terms of sort of the role of PSMs in supporting democracy and democratic process. You've got a story to tell, I think, about a nuclear power plant, which I think neatly sort of illustrates, the role that you guys still have.
I think there are two stories which are quite important, and I think it's the importance of the public service media as a strong player on the media landscape, meaning that when the Slovene television went down in ratings, in financing, in trust, all the market has lost, because the commercial competitors got ratings for nothing, and then the investment of their owners went down. So it was very bad for all the producers who didn't get the deals they were expecting for the commercial TVs, because they got the ratings and that was it. This is one point, and the other point is the importance of public service meaning for Slovenia, for any market. But for example, in Slovenia, we had recently there was announced the referendum for the nuclear plant, and because the public service media, national TV, discovered the story behind it, the politics decided not to have the referendum, and they stopped the project right now. So thanks to the public service media, we might not have another nuclear plant, and hopefully we will discuss democratically about it. So which are the good things, which are the bad sides, not just have a referendum with no information. And we think it's really relevant that all the topics are discussed in the media before they come into the political plates. And this is what public service media is for. It's a place where a political debate takes place in an open, an open parliament.
Yeah. And Robert, I wanted to talk to you guys. It's a completely different project, but Scam has done very well. Completely different, but attracts a younger audience. Quite innovative thinking. What does that sort of say about the way that you're looking on the role of a PSM in terms of the types of shows that you're putting out there? It's not hard news, but it's engaging, entertaining, and getting hold of that youthful demo.
Yeah, right. I mean, as a public service media, we have to serve the entire population, so all the groups and all the different types of interests. And as such, we have when we do a mapping of our stakeholders, it's a huge map, lots of groups that we have to cover. With the development of media and staying only with the linear channels, obviously we are not able anymore to reach certain audience, especially younger ones. So that's why we have to be innovative, and we have to try. Sometimes we try and fail, sometimes we try and succeed. SCAM is a very good project and it's very successful. We did it for the first time and it works well. But when you would compare the result, look what are the ratings on a TV channel comparing to the digital platforms, it's there are simply not big ratings on a linear channel, obviously, but that was not the task, even as this is purely for the digital audience. And this is, I think, to my team, who was really keen to try that. It has its risks, as anything else when you do it for the first time, but seems this is working, and this kind of lighthouse project for the future, especially for the young audience and in digital world.
Yeah, and Noel, I mean, in terms of sort of looking across Europe, the influx of the US-based streamers, the growth of social, we've got YouTube, TikTok, etc. How does PSM fit into a world where those companies are growing so quickly and with such an audience?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a two-stepped approach, and the growth is phenomenal, exponential, and is worrying. I think we have to sit back as European citizens and say how much of control, how much of what our audiences interact with are concentrated in very few players. And I think it has to be a worry. And we see some countries taking action in terms of TikTok because of the Chinese ownership. we see other concerns, but I think that has to be a worry. I think from public service media, we have to go where the audience is. So there's no point us pretending that TikTok is over there and we're not going to do anything on TikTok because we're worried about the Chinese ownership or whatever it is. We need to go where the audience is, so we need to use those platforms, and we do. We need to use them ethically. We need to have an approach to that. But then the other thing we need to do is offer things that you don't get anywhere. You know, I'm not one of these people, and constantly I meet people who say public service media should only do what commercial media doesn't do. Public service media should just do arts programming. It should just do politics. And what I say to that is that the very people who want us to go into niche programming will be the first people who say, why are we paying for public service media when nobody watches it? And that's where we'll end up. So what we need to do is we need to be attractive to all audiences. We need to be where those audiences are. But, and there is a but, and the Minister has referred to it, we get public funding. So we have additional responsibilities. And we need to be clear that if we are doing the entertainment shows, which we should, if we are doing the live sport that brings everybody together, as we should, that we're also doing the other programming that the commercials don't do. And that's why I referred to arts and culture. That's why I referred to minority programming. And that is where, and that's a struggle. Because I've worked in the commercial sector. I love the commercial sector. It's driven huge innovation in our industry. Robert has worked in the commercial sector. From my perspective, it's easier. You've got a single motive, which is what works, how do I make money? And I've absolutely nothing against the profit motive, but it's pretty straightforward. In public service media, you've got, well, how do I hold my audience? How do I satisfy them? And how do I have minority programming but not have my share? It's much more complicated, but that's life. We get public funding, we need to deal with that. And I think we are dealing with it, and I think we are aware of it. And the young audiences is a particular battle for us, and one that we need to put more and more concentration on. But, you know, for me, you got to work with the TikToks, but you got to provide programming that people cannot get anywhere else.
Yeah. And Robert, I mean, we touched on Scam there in terms of how you're looking to engage that younger audience. Just give us a rundown in Croatia, the viewers that you're getting and trying to attract that younger demo. Have you got some examples perhaps, or how are you trying to go to, like Noel was saying there, going to where the audience is in terms of, looking at maybe putting content onto TikTok or onto YouTube? These are tricky questions for PSMs in Croatia, but all over Europe. How are you approaching it?
I would say all our colleagues in PSMs around Europe are in the same boots and the same set of problems. Croatia might be slightly, specific in a way that we are a very sporty nation. And some would say, why are you spending so much money for football rights? Why don't we invest more in independent production, for example? But our audience is where so before we just went through the procedure of bidding for the FIFA World Cup rights for 2026. And as a preparation for that, we took analysis from the all viewing ratings since 2019 on all TV channels in Croatia. And guess what? The result shows that the first 53 programs were all sports. Okay. Namely football, some handball, and 54th place took the Eurovision Song Contest this year, where we almost won. Luckily, we were good second. But that shows what the audience preferences are, So it's a kind of logical, because a linear TV is it's getting more about live event, it's sport, entertainment, or news, So that's it. But of course, we have to serve all the audience. So that's why it's getting tricky. But the sport is something which holds people together, and we are still fighting, although the fight is getting tougher and tougher year by year, because the sports rights price are going through the roof, and there is a pay TV competition, obviously, but we are still holding on sports, on premium sports. We are proud on that, but we'll see how this is going to develop in the future. When it comes to news, we produce lots of news. I mean, we are hyper producing news on radio, on television, on digital. And maybe this is something we should evaluate for the future, maybe to reduce the hyper production but increase quality also in fiction and drama and documentaries, as such. But definitely we will have to transform in a way that we actually produce. We don't have a problem with the content. We have a quality and quantity in a content, but the way how to reach audience, we will have to rewrap and reformat for this for all the different platforms in the future. Yeah.
And Natalia, I'll come to you. I think when we touched there on sort of the importance of trust, and you were talking about some of the stories that you've covered in Slovenia. How can you sort of leverage, I guess, some of the social media platforms? You said you were working on TikTok when we were chatting earlier, in terms of sort of getting news, onto TikTok and sort of building that place. As PSM's very much, I think, like you were saying as well, Noel, that the trust level of PSMs is still relatively high compared to lots of other news mediums. How are you using TikTok and other socials to sort of really amplify the PSM message?
Well, we already changed a little bit the strategy on social media, but now we are rewrapping it with next year we are going through the project of the integration of news. And during this process, we will define people who will be taking care of producing special short stories for the news. Already now we have few people who are doing it. But this is, the mentality of our users, viewers, listeners has changed, during the change of technology. We need to look for them on all the possible platforms and bring them back and tease them to come back, in fact. Because most of the young generation, they don't even know what is public service media. So we need to go there and say, hi, come to us. Regarding that, we don't have money to produce like a great production of scam. But we have our own, innovative minds, and we produced a special thing which is called First Time, which is first sex stories, which were the problems of the young generation having the first sex, and we did it all across the media, radio, TV, digital, and all the social media. And now we are doing the second generation of first sex because it was very valuable also for the teachers. And it's really important, the cooperation with, I would say, with the tackled ministries, for example, with the Ministry for Education, and see which are the problems we can expose on the media and help, in fact, the educational system to get into. I think we all need a discussion regarding which kind of the educational system we need, with our users, with the young generation, to see what works, what doesn't work, because we see ex cathedra doesn't work anymore. So what we will do, to help, educational system and to help media to integrate and to do something more for the young generation. On the other hand, we shouldn't forget our very, very trusted viewers, which are the older people. In the moment, those have the financial power. People who have retired, who have time, they have basically most of the financial power so we are underestimating them, fighting only for the young generation. We need to also offer them very good series, very good game shows, entertainment. And I think the basic three, rules of BBC from so many years ago: entertaining, educating, and informing is still, there are these three still pillars of our public service media.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. I think one of the pressures obviously is funding in terms, I think probably in Croatia, perhaps I might turn to you for that one, Minister. But the way that we're funding as well, public service media is changing. In the UK, for example, where I'm from, we've had licence fee for a long time. There's a lot of pressure on that system. Perhaps I can ask you, Minister, in terms of sort of the way that you see things developing, how do you see the evolution, I guess, of PSM funding broadly? But if we can talk about Croatia, that's great. But
yeah, well, we've been discussing it, of course. I've been involved in discussions about media in different positions for more than 15 years, so it was always a discussion about the model of financing, but I have a feeling that now it's more accurate than ever, and the majority of public service broadcasters in Europe are either going through some transformation or have completed it or are discussing as to in which direction they are going to go. We had a traditional model which was working rather well. So compared with other public service media, we were always satisfied with the percentage of our citizens who were respecting the obligation to pay the license fee. But of course, this is coming under many question marks, especially because the system that we have is quite costly. And we were looking at different models. There is a number of countries that went towards the financing from the state budget, which we know from Amsterdam Protocol onwards is something that we are trying to see as the last resort for the public service broadcasters, because you never know, especially in a changing democratic and not so democratic landscapes in many countries, what might happen the following day. If you depend on the license fee, then there is always very strong voices of those who think that the public service broadcaster is not catering to their anticipations. So when Robert was talking about sports, I was watching the body language of my state secretary and one of our most successful producers. So they were looking at each other like he was talking about sports and they were thinking about investing in and then if they were saying, here is the head of the documentary program, so he was like, sports, and where are documentaries? And then somehow, if you, and you can't cater to the expectations of everyone, and then you have loud individuals or organizations who keep questioning if the public service media is delivering its public service, which then creates an unease. And if you would ask an average citizen, they would say, like, it's very expensive what we are paying for the public. Why am I paying it? Because I can. There is also an issue of, so some countries went in some other models, like Nordic countries that we were also discussing about, which comes as a part of the tax income, which is a great model because it permits you to tax with highest percentage those who have larger incomes, and then have the problem with the license fee is that everyone pays the same, the retired person with this very small retirement and someone who is very wealthy. But there the problem is a trust and a general perception. We in Croatia have a major problem with, in general, with the trust and perception of institutions, whichever, from politics, public service, media, any other, and it is partly generated as a consequence of the transition. I'm not going to go into, but in general, the reaction of the public to any institutional initiative would be to hold back and say, what do we do? So navigating through that kind of public sentiment, I would say, and proposing a system that is at the same time going to guarantee stability necessary level of independence and understanding of the politicians, parliament, and general public that we are introducing something that is sustainable and positive for the public service media and doesn't go against their individual or political interests. It's not an easy task, to say at least. But we have a vision as to in which direction we are going to go. I think that at the moment we are even trying to find a third way in between the two, and I think by the time we start the public consultations, we are going also to propose something which is a little bit different than the usual models. We are indirectly introducing it in the past 2 years, this 2024 and 2025, when we were forced, because we were not increasing the license fee, we were forced to invest from the state budget first last year to this year to make up for the projected loss that was necessary to deliver the public service, but also in 2025, which is the government's investment to enable HRT to go through this transformation. And hopefully by the end of next year, we should have a new legislation. I'm discussing it quite a lot also with my colleagues in the Council of Ministers. I was joking yesterday with Monsieur Courant being the oldest minister around the table, not necessarily by age, but the fact that this is our third mandate. So we've seen a lot of discussions in the past few years in Europe, especially when there was new legislation, the DSM and others, also the intellectual property rights rules. And, you know, there is a lot of changes at the European level, both in terms of legislation, in terms of trying to regulate especially social media and try to make up for the changes in the technology. So, yeah, I didn't say anything directly because I can't before we start the formal consultations, but we are really reflecting on various models, and I hope that we will propose something which is going to guarantee necessary independence, which is not easy to guarantee, but at the same time have a sustainable and a solid system of financing.
That's really interesting. Thank you. I mean, it sounds transformative. We're in that sort of phase, I think, where it feels like the industry is, especially the PSM side of things. You know, we are. It's time to evolve quite quickly and adapt. I mean, Noel, across Europe, we're seeing. Just staying on the funding topic, you know, we're seeing different countries, as the Minister was saying, adopting different funding license fee maybe, or taken within the state. Is there a preference for the EBU? Do you guys have a sort of...
No, we don't. We have set criteria that we believe need to be applied. The license fee is still the most popular, but last year it fell below 50% of total funding of PSM across Europe for the first time ever, because France switched away from the license fee. So the other models are, as the Minister has rightly said, in Finland and Sweden, you have a separate taxation model. You have a household charge, which works very well in countries like Germany, and which has significantly increased funding where that has been introduced. Others would say that that is fairer because it reduces the numbers of people who avoid paying, which is fairer, obviously, on the people who do pay. So we don't pick one. What we say is that state budget is the most risky. And state budget on an annual basis is extraordinarily risky, because even if you have a government that doesn't interfere, once they have that lever and the government changes, you can have, that's a huge power to have over a broadcaster, that every year a government is going to decide what your funding is. It's just a huge, huge power. And in the wrong hands, a very dangerous power. Doesn't mean it can't work, state budget, but we would always argue there has to be a multi-annual agreement in place. The broadcaster has to know that if the next government changes for 5 years, for 10 years, they will have a fixed amount, ideally linked to inflation or to growth in GDP or some other measure. But that standalone state and state budget is really dangerous. I'm very interested to hear the Minister, and I look forward to hearing the third way as that materialises. Some other countries, Ireland, where I'm from, in the last 12 months has a licence fee which has been supplemented by state budget. But again, we are pushing that becomes, that you know over a 5-year period what that additional funding will be. So there's a lot of different dynamics, you know, and they change. The BBC, I remember I got calls from Director Generals all over Europe because the Conservative government about 2 years ago, a senior minister said they were going to move the BBC to subscription, which is pay-per-view. And it was a Sunday Times. I was like,
I remember that one, yeah.
As a bomb gone off or something, I woke up and I had all these missed calls, and it was like, because if the BBC moved to subscription, that would be huge. It would just be have huge implications across Europe. It's gone now. Nobody in the UK is talking about subscription. So, in fact, the debate around the licence fee is not very hot in the UK at the moment. So these things come and go, but for us it's about, we're agnostic on each one, but for us it's about how do you preserve independence. Let's talk about at some point the European Media Freedom Act, which says that public service media has to have adequate funding. And for me, that has to be tied into commitments over a period of years, or else the government just have too much power. And regardless of how benign the government might be today, the government might change tomorrow.
Yeah. Robert, I'm going to let you jump in, then we're going to go back to the Freedom Act. I think you had something to say, yeah.
I would just wanted to jump in. I mean, this is the hottest topic of the whole discussion around PSMs. Right, adequate funding, that's the question. What's the adequate funding for the PSM? How much we work to what's our public remit? So these are all the discussions, regardless of the model of the funding, would that be license fee, state budget, or something else. The question is, what's the value of public service media? So all these discussions, when you look around, it's coming to this, you know, like NATO is saying that each country should invest 3% in military or 2% in military. So these are kind of, you know, intention of all these discussions. So we came to kind of leverage that the public service media around Europe should worth around 0.2 to 0.3% of the GDP. So that's it's crystallized that this is becoming the value of the family. This is still to be debated, you know, but that's where we are working now, which means that in some countries we are already at that level. For example, this is the case in Croatia, you know. So that means that we will not grow in the future.
Yeah.
You know, we will grow if our GDP, our economy will grow, then we can grow together with them, you know. So that's the basically what I want.
No, yes, of course.
I think there are services which we are just talking, also discussing about the financing, but there are services which are done by the public service media, which should definitely be paid by the government. These are minority programs because government has signed the contracts with the foreign country, you know, to take care of the minority. So government must give money for minority programs. Accessibility, you know, taking care of people with special necessities, disabled and so on, is also in our constitutions. So government needs to finance that. And on the other hand, the license fee needs to be for all the other programming, where, you know, you need to define which is the public one and the one which is financed, and in which part it's financed from the license fee. Like, for example, sports, we cannot afford to have all the sports. Like, we cannot afford to have football because it's too expensive. But as we try to find the sports which are still, you know, accessible for us. But on the other hand, you know, the public expects us to fulfill all those minority accessibility and also give more money for the sports. So how to handle that? Which is the formula? Which is the right formula between the license fee and the financing from the government, which needs to be there? Mm-hmm. Because I think for this really basic things, government should take care. Because also in the license fee area, you know how it is. You have a government which raises the license fee, and then you have, like, we didn't have 12 years of government who didn't raise the license fee, and now we are in the troubles because in 12 years the costs have went up. Yeah. You know, of the licenses and everything, and we can't do the same. We can't give the same remit as we did like 10 years ago. So, like, really, a new model is necessary, and I'm glad that the Croatian government is thinking about that. And I hope you will find out a very nice model so that we can copy it.
We look forward to hearing more about that. It sounds, the third way. Noel, I want to come to you on the Freedom Act because we haven't talked about that. We've got 14 minutes left as well. We've got a lot to get through in 14 minutes. Talks about the European Media Freedom Act and what it means for PSMs, if you can, as well, just in case people aren't aware.
The European Media Freedom Act is an important new piece of legislation from Europe which seeks to preserve the independence of media, of public service media, and it has certain stipulations around appointments of Director General, around having adequate funding for the first time. That's in writing in European legislation. It has a number of other provisions which are there designed to help preserve the independence of public service media because there is so much political pressure in some countries. We worked at the EBU very closely and I had regular meetings with then Vice President Jourova, who pushed this through, and former Commissioner Breton. And what I would say about this is I travel a lot, and particularly in Eastern Europe, the level of knowledge of the European Media Freedom Act is huge. And I say this in Brussels, there's a lot of expectation out there. I do media interviews, and for the first time, I'm being asked about a piece of European legislation. I was never asked about the Digital Services Act. I was never asked about the Digital Markets Act. But I am asked about the European Media Freedom Act, and the European Commission need to step up here. You know, they have introduced this piece of legislation. They have raised expectations in countries where there is a lot of political pressure. And I say this, you know, in Brussels as well as here, they need to live up to that. In terms of enforcement, where there are blatant breaches of European media freedom, and I can give you 3 or 4 countries straight away where that is happening. So we are positive about it. Some of our members had some misgivings about it, but at EBU we're positive about it. We feel it will have a positive effect if properly implemented, and we just look forward. You know, we're going to be looking at infringements. We're going to stay in regular contact with the Commission around this, and we just look forward to it making life hopefully a bit easier in some countries for public service media.
Minister, can I talk to you about the Freedom Act and its importance, not just for Croatia, but the region, the continent?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that it started, we had a long discussion. It started with Ursula von der Leyen's commission, with her very clear commitment from the beginning that we need to recognize the role of media in general as important pillars of our democracy. And it was very difficult negotiations. It is usually difficult to negotiate about the European documents and acts and directives and everything else. But here it was really a question of competences, of a question of translating the principles agreeing to the principles that we are going to be able to apply in different traditions and circumstances. When I think as a minister responsible for media about implementing all these principles, I would say rather principles than the provisions itself, because this somehow we always manage. But the question is if you really achieve what was agreed upon. I think it is less, other than a few exceptions, it is less a problem of public service media, it is more a problem of what is happening in a broader media landscape, where we have we have this multiple stakeholders, and some driven by very clear and exclusive commercial interests, earn money, whatever, some being subject to foreign influences. We've seen recently what happened with the Romanian elections, but it is happening all over Europe. So there are a lot of elements, some also key questions. This is why I mentioned the intellectual property rights, which are also important, very important in the media for the journalists and everything, where not respecting the principles is directly killing the business model, where you had value for what you produce as a journalist and then as a producer of media based on your author's work. Today, when the AI is going to collect information and connect and present it in some new forms, there is this question, like, where is the economy of producing high quality media according to what we understand as ethical and professional standards? Who is going to pay for that? And at the end, again, it will be only public service media that is actually going to be ready to pay for that. We know that even large networks that operate in many European countries are already thinking about their new business models based on the AI. We touched it a little bit yesterday. So I would say that, it took us several years to agree on ENFA in the context, business and technological, as it was at the moment. By the time we all adjust our legislation, we will already be in another universe, technology-wise. So it is a battle, it's a struggle to try to keep up, not to be 100 meters behind, to be only 10 meters behind, so that we still feel that we can make up. So I would say really, and to conclude here, when I think about as a minister responsible for media, but also as a minister who was there around the table negotiating each segment of this regulation, is that we are more or less still fine, we are okay with the public service media, with problems here and there. The biggest issue is with all other media that operate too often outside of any professional or ethical or any other rules.
Yeah. And I mean, you touched on AI there. We've got 6.5 minutes to talk about AI, so let's try doing that. I mean, AI, what's the panel? You guys are super informed in your respective countries across the region. Noel, I'm going to start with you. How do PSMs tackle the potential of AI? I mean, AI has, and in some ways, PSMs might come out of this very well, because your trust levels, you can still sort of push through.
I think in terms of AI, and I'll to quickly summarize it, is I'm positive about AI. There's huge possible drawbacks. We need to get the ethics right. The use of it in disinformation is scary. All of those things, but there are lots and lots of positives in terms of how it can be used by public service media and by other media. I think the main point that we all need to realize about AI is what you see now is absolutely nothing. It's just the start. This thing is moving so fast that the capabilities you're going to see in 1 year, in 2 years, never mind 5 years, is just going to be transformational. And a lot of the AI companies you see now are going to go bust, and a lot of programs aren't going to work, but a lot are going to work. So I think as public service media, we just need to realize that this is going nowhere. This is going to transform our industry, and we need to get the ethics right, and we have a group working on the ethics. We need to get cooperation and exchange right in terms of information. We need to reach out to big tech, which we are, to see where they're going, because unfortunately, this is going to be owned by 4 or 5 companies. You know, the top 3 companies are going to invest 360 billion euros in research in the next 2 years. So this is not going to be owned by European governments or European broadcasters. So we are going to have to deal with big tech. So we need to get all of the safeguards and then be cautious initially, but realize that this is a moving train, and it doesn't have a reverse button.
I think it's really interesting, and it's interesting. The minister was talking about not being 100 metres behind, being 10 metres behind. Perhaps some might say that PSMs over the years, sometimes it's not quite as easy to react quickly. On AI, which I think I completely agree, it's going to be transformative. Do you think, looking across Europe sort of broadly, do you think the PSMs are reacting quickly enough?
I think that we made it one of our biggest priorities last year, and I'm amazed at we've pulled all of the strategies of PSM together. We had a massive AI summit, 500 people last week. We're connecting broadcasters in terms of AI development. So there is a great level of knowledge there. I don't think we should rush too quickly, because there's a huge amount of experimentation there. Nobody has the plan yet. Nobody. From BBC to all of the commercials, everyone is dipping in. So I think we are responding. I see that. I think we also need to not go crazy on this until we get a shape in the next year or two. I think it's more a psychological recognition that we will have to engage with this technology and the people providing it.
Good stuff. Robert, I'm interested. AI, are you using AI? Does it come into daily use? Because we talk about it all the time, but I speak to lots of people and it's like, well, not really, not yet.
I do use it, certainly, every day. Lots of the writing I use it. But the joke aside, my curse here is that my background is technology. And from what I see, is the AI is going to be the biggest transformative force in history of the mankind. And it will influence all our lives, in the future. This is just the beginning, and nobody actually everybody is playing with that, and there is still no clear strategy, not with HRT, not with other colleagues, but from what's coming, what's already visible, that the development of the technology is going, advancing rapidly, and in a couple of years we will see something what probably lots of us would never imagine. But we are going on a production site in a way that you will soon have ability to do text to movie, not any kind of movie, but the Hollywood Gladiator 2 style of production, sitting by your computer and doing all the work from scripting to characterization of the character to cast, which will definitely result in a flood of AI-generated content available on the internet. And this is going to be high-quality content which will probably speak perfect Croatian, Slovenian, or whatever, and basically anybody will be able to produce it. Yeah. So in this media chaos that is, coming, my standpoint is that we need PSMs to be stronger than ever, because we will, as a nation, we will need the beacon, we will need the professional journal, we will need this trustful source and the guardian of the national identity and culture.
Good stuff. We've got about a minute left, so I just want to do some wrap-up questions. Noel, I'm going to talk to you about the PSM Compass. If you can just quickly tell everyone about the PSM Compass, because this is an interesting...
It's a new tool we've introduced to help our members to manage stakeholders, to use whatever information we have to make their case. It's basically about how you make the case for public service media across Europe, and we rolled it out. We announced it last week, and we're rolling it out over the months ahead.
Good stuff. So yeah, anyone interested, do talk to Noel
Please
about
do.
it, because it's a good bit of kit. Let's do some crystal ball gazing for the next minute or so. The role of the PSM is changing. We've heard from the Minister about new ways of funding potentially, third ways, etc. We talked about AI, how the whole industry is adapting and transforming. Let's look ahead. Noel, I'm going to start with you and we'll work our way along. Where do you see the PSMs going? What's the landscape going to look like in 3 or 4 years' time? And how can we make sure that PSMs are at the forefront of media consumption?
I think that if we maintain our trust levels, then we will thrive more in an AI environment where trust disintegrates. I think that if we maintain a connection with the audience, the connection that we have, I think it's going to be a difficult few years for everybody in the media, and I think that's why having support from government, having support from stakeholders is going to be critically important for us.
Good stuff. Robert, for HRT and you guys?
For HRT, I think the relevance and the trust is the most valuable currency that we have to develop this. We have to work on our relevance in digital world. We still maintain relevance in linear world, but in digital we have to earn it even more. We are on the right path, and we will have to become more data-driven than before.
Good stuff. Natalia?
I have a little bit different view on that. I think different generations are coming, and the research on Generation Alpha, born between 2005 and 2025, are showing us data that they are going back to their grandmother's tradition. So they're taking out the vinyl records, they are knitting back again, and so on. So I think good old content will always be the things we need to have on our public service media, and no AI will change it. And there is also the question of the copyrights, which I think authors should fight for them, so that that AI companies don't take their work and put them into the machine and produce something new. So this, I think, it's up to authors' organization to fight for. And also, I think, like they predicted the death of the radio, and at one moment they predicted the death of the old cassettes, and we know that now they are coming back. So, I think humankind is different than technology. We'll somehow adapt to the new technology, but old values will still be maintained, and we will recognize the story which was made by a person and the story which was made by an AI. The new generation will definitely know that.
Fingers crossed. And Minister, if we can wrap up with yourself, your next 5 years, what's the landscape going to look like? What's the role of the PSM going to be, do you think?
Well, as I said, our role is really to try to adapt the framework, the system of financing, so that in these changed circumstances, and we've never seen such a pace of quick change, can permit these people on this side to continue doing in what they believe and what we believe is important for our society. It's not an easy task, but if we help each other with information, with analysis, with the lessons learned, I think it's not just a question of survival of public service media, it's really survival of our democracies. Without public service media, it is obvious that our democracies are great, great risks.
Yeah, excellent. Well, it sounds, we've had an excellent discussion, lots of transformation on the horizon. 4 fantastic guests. I hope you've gained a lot from them. I certainly have. Noel, Robert, Natalia, and Minister, thank you very much. Please put your hands together. Thank you.